Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show, and this one is going to be interesting because we actually were hitting up a new release that we somehow we missed at the theaters because it was limited screenings and we didn't get a chance to go see it at the time, way back at the start of the summer. However, it's coming to home video and your video on demand services, so we finally get a chance to look at It Comes at Night, starring Joel Edgerton, directed by Trey Shults. We're going to talk about this, and this is the funny thing, is I remember seeing the trailer, and I liked the poster, but I really didn't know what it was about. You know, it had a cool title, had a cool poster.
I was kind of worried that it was going to be what I thought it was going to be, and I was right.
Oh dear. Well, we're going to start spoiler free. We'll give you warning before we do spoilers, as per usual. Well, I'll get to ask my question because Tim already answered it. I usually tell you what it's about and then say, Tim, did you like it? And then you give it a couple of seconds of suspense, and then you like drum roll, and then you say.
Well, I mean, I'm not showing all my cards yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I still might surprise you.
So what is it? I really didn't know. I was really surprised when the movie started to discover that it was actually kind of a post-apocalyptic, kind of dystopian type movie, where the world has seemingly had like a virus outbreak that's killing people. There's no zombies or anything like that, but it's just people are dying. Very contagious, and our main characters live alone in this house in the woods, which is kind of how they're surviving. They're on their own. You've got Joel Edgerton's character, named Paul, his wife Sarah, and their son Travis. They're living together. They've got a dog as well, named Stanley, and they're just kind of dealing with things. The movie starts with them actually killing and burying Sarah's father, the grandfather of the story. We start off with him infected, and that's how we're sort of introduced to the world and how dark it is. And it's a very dark film. It's a very moody, depressing film, honestly, because it feels like there's no hope for anything. And yeah, so most of the plot though comes from the fact that they encounter another person who may or may not also have a family. I'm being very, very
Vague on purpose.
careful. Yes, I'm being careful. That's
Gotcha.
what I'm saying. Because I think there's a lot of suspense in the film about various things that I don't want to spoil. So I think that is where we'll leave plot. There's a constant concern that they're getting sick, of course. And there's hints of other things as well. But again, I don't really want to go into spoilers. So that's as much as I'm going to tell you right now in the spoiler-free section. I will say it's incredibly tense. There's a lot of the stories about trust and mistrust and like, can you trust someone else? And a lot of drama and tension comes from that. And you're probably saying, is it a horror movie? Like, it doesn't really sound like a horror movie so far. It is. It absolutely is a horror film, 100%. Despite what Tim might be about to say, because I feel like he might argue with me on that.
No, I wouldn't argue with that. No.
Awesome. Well, you already kind of spoiled it, but Tim, did you enjoy It Comes at Night?
I think this was a very well-made movie that I did not care about. I think technically, like, everything about it is well done. You know, I thought the direction was good. All the acting is really good. Cinematography, everything. It looked beautiful. It sounded great. But at the end of the day, I was just really bored. I did not find the story interesting at all. And I can't really go too much more into without being spoilery, but yeah, well, that's it. It's definitely well made. Like, I don't want to say like, oh, this was a crappy movie, the people didn't know what they're doing, but I guess basically the story kind of bored me.
I loved it.
I knew it.
What do you mean you knew it? Did you know it?
I think I have a sense for the type of movies that you like usually, but
you mean the type of movies that you know you're wrong about, but you feel that way anyway?
I don't know how you can be wrong about an opinion, but sure, if that's the way you feel.
I don't know how you can be either, Tim, but somehow you prove it time after time after time. You come out of this show and you prove that opinions can be wrong. Seriously though, like you say, technically it's very good. There's a lot of fantastic. It shoots night very well. I love the the use of light, especially. There was a lot of like gas lantern sort of usage, and like whenever someone was walking like past like the up and down the stairs, and you see the light shafts coming through the beams, and it would be moving as they were walking down and stuff. Like visually stunning, and it used a lot of visual tricks that I really liked. But for me, I thought it was incredibly well crafted because it was extremely tense, and I liked it for a lot of different reasons. One, the horror of the story, it hints at other things, but the horror of the story is actually something very simple. And I can't really go into too much without going into spoilers, so we'll save that for spoiler territory. But I like what the movie's really about. I like. I like the overall. I don't want to spoil anything, and a lot of what I like about it I can't even talk about because it's one of those movies where you can't not spoil it as soon as you start talking about plot.
It's like you said, from the title, the poster, even the trailer, which I watched before, really doesn't give you much of an idea of what the story's about. So it's pretty hard to talk about it without spoiling.
The only thing I'll say about the title and maybe the trailer is that you might think, oh, it's called It Comes at Night. This is a monster movie. This is about a monster who shows up at night. That is incorrect. That is not what the movie is. So maybe leave that at the door and go on with just sort of blank and find out what it is.
I mean, honestly, that might have been part of my problem with it as well. Because I think even if you looked at the like IMDb little summary or whatever they have on their page, I think it even says something about like a supernatural occurrence or something, and there's none of that. I don't know, I thought it was like maybe if I wasn't thinking that there might be it might be like a monster in the woods kind of movie or something, I might have.
Just to correct, it doesn't say supernatural because I'm looking at it right now. It says unnatural threat.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's still, without not really knowing much, like, I'm still in my head, I'm thinking, like, all right, are we going to have some type of monster movie or something? Which, I don't know. That was kind of my concern I alluded to earlier, though. I didn't think, I thought that that's what I was hoping for, but that wasn't what I was gonna get.
Because I wasn't sure, because even at the start of the movie, the first act, like I wasn't sure where it was going to go and what the movie was going to be ultimately about. Was it going to go down a certain path? And there's a lot of possibilities that open up, and it definitely goes down one path. And I think for that first chunk, when I thought it might or may not, there was definitely a moment though, maybe 30 minutes in, where I said, no, I know what this isn't now. I know where this is going. And it's funny actually that you didn't like it that much, because I actually think this shows a lot of similarities with The Witch.
Interesting. Okay.
I can see a lot of parallels to be drawn in how the story's told, what it's kind of about, and just kind of the pacing certainly feels very similar. Like I think a lot of the people who complained that The Witch was boring and like too slow, I think those same people will probably think the same thing about this.
Yeah, I could see that. I didn't really think about those two before,
actually,
but I can.
Bit of trivia on that subject actually. Just since I brought up The Witch. Apparently, the goat that played Black Phillip in The Witch is in this movie.
It is?
Yeah, there's goats at one point, and apparently one of the goats is one of the goats from The Witch.
Wow, I did not even notice that.
Bit of trivia.
I do remember before saying that the goat was in another movie. I didn't realize it was this one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I love The Witch, and I know I probably sound like I don't know, that I have sporadic taste where similar movies I might like one and not the other, but I don't know. It's hard for me to get mad at this one, and say like, yeah, I didn't really enjoy it, but again, everything was really well done. Like it's, just I don't know.
It's oozing atmosphere and tension. Like there's so many scenes in this where you're worried about, and again, it ties into the idea of trust and like, do you trust the other person? And like there's so many times where you think, oh, this might just about to be a turn badly, and there's even like there's a specific video game as well that it was making me think of a lot that I'll again talk about in spoilers.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2, yes, I got that as well.
Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That's what it reminded me of.
No, I do. In all seriousness, though, I do wonder if our backgrounds have anything to do with it. Because since you went to film school and stuff, I feel like maybe not that you have to go to film school
Well,
to appreciate certain stuff, but I wonder if that.
just for the record though, like, the school I went to, like it was more production based. Like I didn't study, um, theory, like film
Like,
theory. I never did that.
Okay, but I imagine and I mean I could be wrong, and again you don't have to go to school for that stuff to appreciate movies when you watch them. But I do wonder maybe if when a movie is more technically impressive, if maybe that's something you appreciate more, with having a production background, where I can see the skill in it, but maybe it doesn't do as much for me.
To a
I don't know,
point,
just curious.
but I don't think the technical aspects would ever carry it on its own. Like I think
Sure,
that's discounting like other stuff in the movie was working for me. The technical aspects heightened like what's there, which is what it should be. Like a movie should, the script itself should be quality, and then all the other stuff that goes into it afterwards is what brings it up and heightens it and sort of shapes it into a movie. And for me, the characters, and because it's a very personal story, it's a very like the actual horror and the actual kind of horror element is very much because it was actually, as much as I knew what it wasn't about half an hour in, there was actually something else I thought it might be, and I thought that up until very near the end. Like I thought I knew where it was going.
Okay.
And it didn't go that way. And I'll talk about that in spoilers. But it was very much about the people and what they were going through, and kind of the horror of their situation and what that does to the human psyche and what that does to people. Like how do they then, what do they turn into? What do they become because they're forced to do all these extreme things to survive? And just like what does the world become when you're in this situation? And for me, that was where a lot of the really fascinating stuff was coming from.
Yeah, I think one problem I might have had though is I feel like this is something that I've seen before. Like I don't know, like there's so many other post-apocalyptic TV shows and movies now. I didn't feel like it was treading new ground that much.
Actually, I think it was, and I can't really again say tell spoilers, but there's a very specific spin in this that I think makes it entirely different from every other post-apocalyptic. But partly because it's so insular, like it's one location in the woods. Like they never go to a city, they never go to like other places. It's just this one set of people try to survive in one location. And I love a bottle movie, Tim.
Oh yeah.
But it isn't exactly a bottle movie. They venture off into the woods a little bit from time to time, but still, it's more or less. It's in the ballpark.
It's bottle adjacent, as Matt would say.
It is a bottle movie, but it's one of those big bottles, like big 2-liter bottle, not a usual sort of like I think normally you say bottle, you think of like a Coke bottle or maybe a beer bottle, that kind of size. No, this is a big plastic bottle. Is a
contender for like the Guinness Book of World Records biggest bottle.
Well, no, because surely the biggest bottle is just the entire universe, which would make Star Wars the biggest bottle.
Wow, I'm talking about actual bottles now, but
oh, you're talking about actual bottles, okay? Yeah. Oh no, okay, right, we've veered off. So I liked it a lot. I can't really say much more. So I think with that, so we can stop dancing around things. Let's give the spoiler warning and we can get into it. But I will say just before we go into spoilers, very slow, very brooding, full of tension, full of character. It is a slow, dread-building story. So if you're someone who wants a quick-paced thing, or if you do just want the monster movie that you think it sounds like, that's not what it is. So don't go in expecting that. But anyway, so full spoilers from this point on for It Comes at Night. So you said you'd seen this done before, or this didn't feel like it was doing anything overly new for the post-apocalyptic.
Not that I really felt.
See, I think it did, and I'll explain. I'll explain why. So to me, this group of characters, our main characters, Edgerton's Paul and his family. You know how in every post-apocalyptic story, and you're usually following characters who are traveling, or in video game or in TV show, and they'll encounter the family or the group of people who seem nice at first but are actually nut jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's who these people are. The main characters of this movie are that random group of nut jobs that you encounter on your travels in any other movie. Like,
Oh, okay.
that's what this is. Like, the other characters, Will and his family, Will and Kim and their son, they're the regular heroes who are going through and try to survive, and they think they've found allies here, but no, it turns out they're actually kind of, crazy. Like, at least not crazy. Maybe crazy is not the right word, but they're striving so hard to survive and they've become so paranoid that they've become these fringe-like characters.
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting take on it, but I don't know if we really have seen enough of the world to know if that's like, if they are, this crazy set of like lunatic people, or if that's just kind of the norm of like what's going on now. Because like the only time we ever encounter any other people is when, he's going to get Will's family and they get attacked out of nowhere.
Yeah, but I don't think you need to see the rest of the world. I think we take what we're given here and we can sort of fill in the gaps if you want to. You can think about what the rest of the world is. But that's what it felt like to me. Like, when it gets towards the end of the movie and they basically plan to kill Will and his family because they think, if they leave, they'll go come back later when we're not expecting it and try and steal our supplies. So they plan to kill them, including their son, who's like 5. Like, it's pretty dark stuff. The whole movie's really dark, admittedly, but
yeah, you know what it does kind of remind me of, which I mean maybe I don't know if you're as into it as much, but it actually reminded me of The Walking Dead, which I feel like they kind of went places that I've seen. I don't watch the show that much, but definitely in the comic. But I mean, to be fair though, that's been around for a long time, so there's probably a lot of stuff you could argue they haven't done in that.
Yeah, like that made it interesting to me. But then the other thing that's really interesting is the fact that Travis, Paul's son, Travis, to me is the most important character in the film. He's the point of the film. He's the one who's having these nightmares throughout the film, and every time he has a nightmare, the aspect ratio changes. It gets wider, it gets narrower on your TV. Like, the black bars kind of come in and make it really thin, and it's like, it feels claustrophobic. And he's usually wandering around with the lantern at night, and it's very atmospheric, but again, beautifully shot. And there was a point in this movie where I really thought this film was building up to him going nuts and killing everyone. I really thought that's where it was going for a long, long time. There was lots of these subtle little subtle little hints where he was like starting to be attracted towards Kim, Will's wife, and which made sense. He's like 17, and there's like no people around, and suddenly there's this woman who's not related to him around. Like, I get why he's got feelings for her, why he's attracted to her, but it felt kind of creepy. The way he was getting into like that attic room and overhearing their conversations and listening in. It felt like he was going crazy, and it felt like the reason why he was going crazy was because of just the world he's living in. The movie opens with him watching his grandfather being murdered. Not murdered's maybe not the right word, but killed because he's sick.
Because he's sick.
Yeah, he needs to be put down like a dog. And then throughout the movie, there's this fear that the rest of them will get sick, and when they start talking about, we need to maybe kill the rest of this family, Travis is the one who says, no, but they're not sick, we can't do this. Travis is the one out of them who still has the most humanity, at least in this family, and living in this world, watching all these acts and all these things they're having to do to survive. It's basically just taking away his humanity, and he can't live with that, and that's where the nightmares are coming in. At least that's how I was reading it. Either that, or he was sick the entire film, and the first symptoms as you start having these nightmares, and your reality starts being hard to keep track of. I'm not sure which, but you could read it that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought something weird was up with him. I didn't necessarily think that he was gonna kill anyone, but like you said, there were like weird scenes with him and Kim. I didn't know if that was, gonna be, if something was gonna happen between them that was gonna kind of cause a rift in the families, one way or another.
Oh yeah, I mean, actually, before we move on, I should just to kind of explain what happens with, like, in terms of why they're there, and like, so basically, Will thinks their house is abandoned because it's all boarded up, which they've done for protection. Will tries to get in. They basically hold him at gunpoint, and because they're worried that he might have more people coming after him that'll, come and hurt them, they tie him up outside, and there's like some great scenes here where Paul comes up to interrogate him, and it's all close up. It's all these deep close ups because he's really watching. He's watching his body language, his eyes, like trying to figure out if he's telling the truth. And Will tells him, "Oh no, we were at my brother's, and then we came to this other house, and then we ran out of stuff, so we drove, but our car broke down, so we're at this abandoned house nearby, and it's me and my wife and my son. It's just us. We need help, please, 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 please." And eventually agrees, like, let's go with them. We'll take their supplies and bring them in. They can come live with us. So the plan is that instead of trading something, they can come to our house, live with us. There's more people to defend what we've got, and that's why they end up there. So they come back. But that's not to make light of that. That's the entire first half of the movie is setting that up. It's the interrogating of him. It's the kind of having trust of him to drive to his family. And then, as you say, they get attacked by these random guys, and they have to defend themselves. And I was getting, the video game I mentioned was The Last of Us. I was getting a lot of The Last of Us vibes from this movie. Like, the idea that, raiders are, like, lying in wait to try and kill you so they can take your supplies and stuff. Like, it felt very Last of Us to me. And I do love that game, which is not why I love this movie, but certainly there was some parallels in there.
Cool.
The idea that there's no hope left, like the world's just gone to shit. Which again comes back to Travis and his deteriorating mind. And because that's the thing, there's a couple of moments in the movie where they hint that there is something outside, that there is some kind of, he's seen things in his dreams. And at one point when the dog runs off into the woods, he runs off after it and he hears something. And I thought that was very notable because, like, a couple of scenes went by after that and I'm like, he's the only character who's actually heard or seen anything that would imply there is something out there. So the idea is something, something does come at night. It's not a literal monster. It's something like, it's him sleepwalking. It's him having these nightmares. That's what's coming at night. That's what the movie's about. For me, like, his character was his humanity stripping away, even though his father was, still trying to be a family. They were still doing routine. They were still sitting down and having dinner. They were still doing all these things. But regardless of all that, this world stripping everything away and, not being able to be normal and not being able to treat other people with respect or trust anyone, it was just stripping everything away and it was making him feel less of a human being. And that, by the end of the movie, like, after everything's happened, like, he's deteriorating and he does get sick. Like, that's kind of the end of the movie, is he gets sick after they suspect the other family's sick. And we never actually find out if they are. But there's a whole incident. We'll get into the actual details of that in a little bit. But the movie is largely about, like, losing hope in a world that's so dark. Like, if you've already lost your humanity, you've basically already lost. Like, at least that's how I was kind of what I was taking from. Because at the end of the movie, like, both Paul and his wife Sarah, they basically are just sitting there waiting for death. The final shot is them just kind of like, we've lost, like, our son's dead, like, or our son's dying. So what's the point anymore?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I took away from it, is it's basically, showing how cold and distance people become in this post-apocalyptic scenario. Everything is it's just about me and my immediate family protecting what we have at any costs, and basically losing your humanity and then seeing everyone as an enemy, instead of you would think in these kind of times this is when people should be banding together, but instead, like, paranoia and that kind of stuff went through.
Full of paranoia, like, because this is the thing, is to set up the house is like, they've blocked off every other entrance. There's one door that gets in and out of the house, and there's two doors sort of in this, like, hallway to get out, and, like, there's a lot of, like, there's a lot of tense scenes of them staring at that door, holding up guns with their gas masks on, which they keep putting on, in case they get infected with something, and full of tense stuff like that.
Yeah, and they keep talking about this one door, how it must remain, locked at night at all times, and then that kind of becomes a big plot point later on when, they wake up and see that it was opened during the night.
Yeah, and they set up at that point, of course, that the young kid, Will's son, that he sleepwalks, and it sets up that it was probably him, like, and Travis sort of theorizes it must have been him because I have woken him up and, like, taken him back to bed before. But of course, like, I honestly think that it was Travis that opened it, and I think Travis's nightmares, some of that actually happens. Like, he actually goes out with the lantern and looks.
Yeah, my takeaway is that it was Travis, but he was probably so scared of his dad or something that he didn't want to admit to it, that it was like, well, maybe.
I don't think it's a case of admitting. I think he doesn't know. I honestly think he
Oh,
doesn't
really?
know. Yeah, I
Okay.
think he does it and he's sleeping. He doesn't know he's doing it. Um,
Right.
you know, the whole idea of it comes at night being like, you know, maybe it's the whole idea of him sleepwalking. It's almost like another version of himself takes over. Like it comes at night is actually the other version of him, and I honestly don't think Travis knows that he did it. If he did do it.
And do you think that's a possible side effect of him being maybe infected, or?
If he's infected the whole movie, because they don't really lay out exact rules as to how long it takes to show up, you know, the symptoms and all that, and it's
Well,
all
I thought in the beginning though, doesn't he say like, 'cause isn't that the whole reason why they tie like Will out for, like they leave him tied out for a
yeah.
day because he said symptoms usually show up within 24 hours?
Well, it says it's not like super exact though. It kind of feels like
Okay.
okay, what the visual symptoms that they know of show up after a day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But like I was just like I was thinking about it and I was thinking that well, it doesn't sound like they know a whole lot about it beyond like they get sick and they have boils all over them and they you know they
Yeah.
die. Right, like it doesn't really seem like they actually have like a scientific thing or a scientific knowledge of it. You know, it feels like when this all started, it wasn't like it was a published. Oh, these are the symptoms of this disease. If it even has a
Yeah.
name, like it might not have a name because like it's just happened. And I was just thinking that maybe like this is because I mean it goes against like either he's having these nightmares and all this is happening because of the pressure, the stress, and the stripping away of humanity, and he can't handle it. That's the real horror of the movie. The horror is this is the world we live in now, and what's the point of living if we can't even be nice to each other? Like what? Like it's not enough to survive. You have to actually be worthy of survival. Like is this really
Yeah.
being alive? Like treating people this way, you know, shooting people in the head, you know, killing families with their son. Like,
Yeah.
Is this worth being alive if this is what alive is? Yeah. This is the horror that's, you know, the real horror. Because I think that's what I really like about the movie is when I realised what it was about,
Mhm.
at least to a point, is that, oh, it's not a monster in the woods and it's not like a supernatural force or anything like that. It is purely just the horror. It's like, it is taking the post apocalyptic genre without any horror elements and turning it into a horror story purely because of what the human being has to do to survive in it. That's the horror. And it does that effectively. Like, it feels like a horror movie the whole time. It's not like... It doesn't sound like a horror movie that much when you describe it, but it's shot like a horror movie. It feels like a horror movie. It's incredibly tense. Like I say, a lot of this shooting at night and all the rest of it. But no.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can definitely make a case of the, you know, the paranoia and stuff building up in these people, and you know the way they handle it. That's like the horror element about it. But I don't know. Honestly, uh, I mean, maybe if I go back and watch it, knowing more what it's about or something, maybe I'll appreciate it. But yeah, I do feel like I kind of wish there was like something to latch on to, like, you know, if there is a virus or something, like, it doesn't have to be like a full-on zombie, but maybe it does make people do some type of weird thing or something that, like, I don't know, that have some type of external threat that I could have latched onto, and I think I might have enjoyed that more. But I understand that's not what they were going for. Maybe that's just what I was expecting or something.
Yeah, that would have taken away from it for me, I think, because like that's when it stops being kind of grounded. Like, because this is a very like it's very bleak, and obviously it's a post-apocalyptic movie, but it's not like I think there's an element of not goofiness, but like once you introduce something like that, it gives it a different feel, it gives it a different tone.
It does feel grounded in a way. Like there's nothing about it that honestly, you know, couldn't be, you know, perceivable if there was some type of event like this. You know, that you know, I don't think this is like too far off from, you know, something that could happen, and from the way people would react to it.
Well, I think that's kind of why it works so well for me, is just from a character perspective, is that it doesn't fill in you all the details of what's went on in the world, and even the characters don't even know what's went on all that much. Because like at one point he asked, "Well, were we in the city? Like, did I, you know, what was going on? Like, what's the city like now? Like, what's the population actually doing?" But like it's their reactions to things that feel a bit more genuine. It feels very. It's not sympathetic because it is so dark and it is so violent, but it feels so grounded with how they like interpret things, how they react to things. And like we say, so a big part of the movie is the tension, the paranoia, the mistrust of the other people. And they bring Will and his family into the house, and they have that dinner scene where they sit there and like, okay, here's what the routine is, here's the rules. No one goes out at night, door stays locked. Me or the wife have the keys. Blah 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 blah. And obviously we have the whole section where they are kind of functioning together. Travis gets that crush on Kim, and that all plays out. But the big obviously thing that happens is this incident with the door where it was open. The dog who ran away came back and was clearly sick, and they don't know if the other family got sick. But they don't know if their son touched the dog and got sick. So they send them to another room. Like, for safety's sake, you can stay in one room of the house. We'll stay in our room of the house. The whole families. We'll stay separated, and we'll see what happens after a day or two. But then Travis overhears them saying they want to leave, and it sounds kind of like, oh, maybe the boy is sick and they want to get away, so they don't shoot them because they know what they'll do if they find out that he's sick, and that kind of thing. Or maybe there's another reason, but it gets suspicious, and then they grow mistrustful of that, and that's when they have this plan to like go and shoot them, and they, it's again very tense. There's a lot of gun pointing at each other, and it ends in this really shocking and disturbing like murder of this whole family where they shoot. Like they shoot at the wife, but they actually hit the son first, and the mother's like, "You shot my baby, you shot my baby," and then she gets shot. Like, the whole thing's super dark.
Yeah.
But there's little tidbits throughout. There's like the scene where Will and Paul have that drink together, and they're reminiscing of like, "Oh, what did you do before now?" And Will's like, "Oh, I was an engineer. I did a bit of construction kind of stuff," and Paul's just like, yeah, I'm a history teacher. You want to know about the Roman Empire? I'm your guy. But this is where Will slips up, because Will's like, oh, I was an only child, and the big thing in that interrogation scene earlier is that Paul was like, you need to make me believe you that this story's not bullshit. That everything you're telling me is true about your family. It's not other people that are going to try and murder us or anything like that. But he catches him in a kind of a lie here, because he's like, I'm an only child. But in that story earlier on, he mentioned that they were at his brother's place, and he's like, and he brings that up, and it's like your heart kind of sinks during that moment, because you're like, oh god, did he lie? Like, did he lie? Where's this going? And he kind of like, when Paul hits back with that, I thought you were at your brother's place. He's like, oh no, I met my brother-in-law. It's Kim's brother, and it's like, is that genuine? Did he lie, or was that a genuine kind of thing where he either misspoke, or maybe he does like think of him as a brother, or but that's the thing though, is why would he lie about that specific detail, especially when the rest of it turned out to be, it was his wife and it was his son, there was no one else there, all the food that he said he had, like, so why that detail? Why would he lie about that one? But the important part is that it's the seed of mistrust. It's like, just as Paul is starting to actually trust him and like having him around, there's that seed, because that's the scene ends there, because he's sort of like, oh well, I think I'm done, I'm going to bed. Like, there's just this underlying tension that's reignited from that moment on, and it's just there.
Yeah.
Until things ramp up and we get the whole scene at the end where he ends up shooting the family. So.
Yeah, and I thought it was well done the way, Paul's like a very interesting character where you can kind of get the sense that he wants to be more trusting, and almost that maybe he wants to like kind of have like a community or more people around, but he is his number one concern is his family, so any little even the tiniest bit that may put them in danger, you can just see how that like instantly ramps him up, and he gets him like super protective and stuff. And
I think when I compare it to The Last of Us, I think there are some comparisons to make with Joel, and if you've not played The Last of Us, basically what I mean by that is that he didn't start off as a bad person, and he is like, he cares. The reason why he does what he does is to protect the people he cares about, but he goes to such lengths to do it that it kind of turns him into someone who isn't really that human. Like, his first thought is to, we should shoot him in the face because it could be dangerous to let him live. Like, that's kind of how his mindset kind of works. And there's lots of moments where you see him be very loving towards his wife, towards his son, where he just does not let his son go in to see the dog because A, like, it'll be too hard for him to see, but B, because you might get infected. Like, he's really strict about it, but you can see, like, he's like, don't make me be the bad guy here. Don't make me be the bad guy, because I will. I'm not letting you go in there. Like, you can see that he's not just like an evil character. That's what makes him interesting. He's someone who was a decent person, but he's so obsessed with protecting himself and his family that he does these absolutely insane things. And the way he thinks has just completely changed from when he presumably was, before all this, when things were normal.
Yeah, and I think, again, if you want a really good long examination of something like that, the Walking Dead comics, and maybe the TV show to an extent, I don't really watch it, but the comics, so that's basically what it is. It's, the story of all these different people, but mostly, this one man, Rick Grimes, and then what the lengths that he's willing to go to, protect his family and his group and stuff.
I feel like you're describing the plot of Walking Dead, and like it's like the most watched TV show on the planet. Everyone is sitting at home just like, Tim, we know about the Walking Dead. All right, we'll watch it. Yeah, I don't like the show. I thought it had a good pilot. I don't like the rest of the show all that much, though. It basically just goes downhill from there. The comic, I do like. Admittedly, I have not read it since about issue 104, and it's like getting close to 200 now. I think it's been
it's
getting high up there in numbers.
It's a weird book where I get it in trade, and like I almost never like think about it, but then when a new one comes out, I'm always like, there was a time when it was like I couldn't get to the store fast enough, and it's been around for so long now that it's kind of like, I don't know, should I keep getting this? But I do always end up getting it, and sure enough, every time I get it, I sit down and read it, like, cover to, the back,
cover.
like
cover to cover is the phrase.
Cover
Tim.
to cover.
Tim, that was a really impressive flub, because you said the word you forgot right before you forgot it. Cover to what's that word again?
What do you call the back cover? But yeah, I always manage to read it in one sitting, because whenever I start, it just is so captivating.
I agree. Like I say, like, it was kind of losing steam for me around when I was getting towards the 100 issue kind of mark, but the first like 8 volumes of that book, and maybe a little bit past that as well, are really goddamn good. Like, I read it all. I read all that stuff just before the show started, like, because I was like, I knew it was coming. I thought, I want to try the book first, and I read a good chunk of it, and it was good stuff, and it does deal with a lot of that kind of thing. I think what this movie does, though, when I'm comparing it to other post-apocalyptic things like that, is it does it with this really apocalyptic sense of dread. Whereas sort of stuff like Walking Dead and even Last of Us, to a point, it feels like a more conventional, and this is not a criticism of these things, certainly not Last of Us, but it's definitely a kind of a personal drama. Whereas this doesn't feel like a drama. This feels like a sort of tragedy story where, like, there's this foreboding sense of doom the entire time, but there is no hope. There is no sense of, like, getting through this. And the style, the way the nightmares are depicted, that this, it almost feels Lovecraftian, like a cosmic horror story where this thing is coming and coming, and like, and it's not an actual thing that's coming. It's just like the end of your lives, the end of this setup of this family is inevitable. Like, it's coming, and it's counting down, and that's what you feel throughout the entire movie. Whereas those other stories, like, they're kind of ongoing, and they have this purpose to get to where they're going, and so on and so on. Whereas this is just a complete tragedy where, like, they have no hope of survival, and it's just never. And I think that's what I like about the ending, is, like, the parents, because the reason why, at least the reason why I think they're both sitting there waiting for death is because as Travis is dying and he's sort of like delirious and he's coming in and out of it, he sees his mother and she's like saying, "Oh, it's okay, it's almost dead." It's like she's trying to make him comfortable as he's dying, but she's not wearing a gas mask. Like, every other time they've even had a hint of the disease is, like, around, they've had a gas mask on, and I think they've just given up because, like,
I mean, the big reason why they're doing this and being so protective is because of Travis, and without them, it's kind of like, well, honestly, what is the point of going on now?
Yeah, and I kind of, that's what I like about the ending, and them sitting there waiting for death. Is just like, it's like it took that for them to realize, like, how much of their humanity they've lost. Like, they killed a family and a child, and it was for nothing. Yeah, that's like, you can't get more tragic and dark than that. I mean, you can, but
Yeah,
you go to really dark, dangerous places if you're going darker than this. It's a very
yeah,
bleak story. It feels very bleak. It's not a cheery watch. I'll certainly say that.
yeah. I only laughed a couple of times.
Very good. Very good. I will say that. I mean, I think the main criticism you had is you thought it was well, you thought it was boring because you didn't really care about what was going on.
Yeah,
I can't really give you a reason beyond everything I've already said, but I'll counter that just by saying that I did not feel that way. I did not feel bored. I felt very invested the entire time. Mainly, yeah, it was like style, it was the character, it was the tension of like because I don't think I've ever seen that scene where he's interrogating him. You know, when Will's tied to the tree, and Paul comes out to try and figure out if his story, like what his story is, and is his story bullshit. And he's like, "You need to convince me that this is not bullshit. You know, if you convince me, I'll give you this water." Because he's been tied to the tree for like a day at this point. Like, but if you don't, like, things are going to get bad. And it's like the tension in that scene, the weight that is put onto this, like the sense of danger. Because I think the movie does a really good job of making you feel like Paul's fear of what might happen should this guy have like a party of men who are like waiting or looking for him. Like it really gives you that sense of how desperate he is and how desperate or how determined he is and what he's willing to go to protect what he has.
yeah. And
So-
then, and as I'm watching it too, I am like I did get bored, but it was in a way where I could say this is like me personally. I am bored, but I can see why like other people wouldn't be and why other people would enjoy it. Like it's not like I was watching something that's going like, oh, this movie's awful. I don't see how anyone could like it. It's like, oh no, like I definitely get like what they're going for and the vibe they're trying to do. It just it just wasn't really my thing.
well, that's a shame, Tim. That's a
I mean, it's
shame.
not like I don't want to say that I necessarily hated it. Like I thought it was well done, and I'm not mad that I watched it or anything. It's just, yeah, I kind of knew pretty early on, like, all right, this is not going to be a bad movie, but it's not going to be a movie that I'm going to rave about, and I'm assuming that I probably won't love it or anything, which is yeah, but kind of what happened.
Well, that's a shame. It gets my recommendation.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good.
I wouldn't turn people off from watching it for sure. Like it's
Yeah,
definitely give it a shot.
it's a great slow build, full of tension, full of dread. I think the paranoia that's played with is very good, and like I say, the impending sense of doom throughout the entire thing, I really enjoyed. So yeah, and even just the starkness of the violence as well. Like when the guys like jump out and attack them when they're trying to drive to Will's family, and you just like you see the gun, the bullet hits the window at the side of the car, and like
Yeah.
Paul has to duck down and he's trying to get his gun ready, and it's all of it is just it's very edge of your seat stuff. At least that's how I felt watching. I thought
Oh,
the tension and the suspense, maybe is the better word here. The suspense of a lot of the movie is handled very well. So
oh yeah. I mean, I would definitely say like that scene was really good. That was super intense. Like that's obviously not something that bored me. And then there was a lot of other scenes that didn't bore me. Like the dream sequences were all really well done and very suspenseful. And obviously the ending was pretty exciting.
exciting's
Super
an yeah, exciting's an interesting
depressing,
word, but yeah. Well, in fact,
but
before
yeah,
we,
it's not like definitely that those parts weren't boring or anything.
yeah, before we wrap up, we
Um,
should probably talk a little bit more about the dreams themselves and what's kind of. So obviously, he tends to wander around with his lantern, and there's a lot of him like walking outside and looking for his dog and all the rest of it. But there's also stuff where he's like, he has a dream about Kim like, wanting to have sex with him, but she ends up like throwing blood up into his mouth and like all over his face. And
kind yeah, it's like this very kind of like thick, kind of almost like black liquid kind of stuff.
yeah, it's almost like there's like a sort of deep fear of like like this family's going to like be the end of them, like they are going to infect them. It's like he's scared of getting the disease for a start. He also sees his grandfather who's still sick.
Oh yeah,
And he dreams of actually having the sickness himself and having the boils and the tumors and whatever else it is all over his body. And I think, again, the idea that this incident with his grandfather, and that's the reason why we start the movie at that incident, is because that is really the catalyst for why he feels the way he does and why he is on this downward spiral that's leading him where he's going. And and part of me even wonders, like, did he kind of want it to be all over? Did like not consciously, but did subconsciously, did he go outside and leave that door open because he wanted this to finally end? Like, it just wasn't worth living anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that. Yeah, because it is very, very bleak.
Or is it just a simple case of if you constantly worry about something happening, it will.
True. Yeah.
If you obsess and worry over something, it will just eventually happen. But I don't know. But as I say, I liked it a lot. Pretty much loved it. So no, I guess with that we'll get. Unless you have anything else you want to add before we rate Tim.
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, Tim's desperate to stop talking about this. He clearly is just as bored by this conversation as he was in the movie. The cretin. I just found out yesterday it isn't like Goonies either. Like, what? I don't know. Tim. You're getting harder and harder to take seriously, I'm not gonna lie. So what would you give it out of 10 then? What number comes at night?
I mean, definitely gonna be lower than you, no doubt. I mean, I'm still gonna give it like in my mind, a somewhat decent score again, because everything is done very well, looks very nice, and yeah, there were scenes that did perk me up and interest me. There was just again, I was just bored through a good portion of it, so I'm gonna give it a 6.5, which I still think is decent, and a score reflecting that there's a lot of good stuff to it. But I think at the end of the day, it's just more not my type of movie, as opposed to it being something I legitimately think is bad or wasn't well done.
Okay. I am going to go with an 8.5.
Oh, I knew it.
You knew it. He's like, you
I
the
literally
exact
no,
score.
I literally was thinking that. I was like, I bet
Okay.
he's gonna give it 8. No, I bet 8.5 he'll go.
Yeah, I'm going with 8.5. It's not going as high as a 9. The reason why I'm not going quite that high, I mean, it might grow there, on repeat viewings down the line. It could, because sometimes that happens. But the reason why I'm not going straight to the 9 right off the bat just now is mainly because I almost think it could have been a little bit longer, and there could have just been a little bit more. You say that as if it was a long movie. It was 90 minutes.
Yeah, but when you're bored, you want it to
shut
be
up. Shut
done
up,
as
you
fast as possible.
tasteless hack. Right. So,
well, maybe if it was longer and they actually explained stuff and talked more about, they explained it was like the T virus or something.
no,
Or...
explanation is the last thing this movie needed. Explanation would have killed this movie. We didn't need explanation. Right. So, I wouldn't have minded just a little bit more of a build, especially in the last act. Like maybe a bit more build to the decision to go as extreme as it went. Whereas because it happens relatively quickly, it happens relatively suddenly, and I think a bit more there would have worked quite well. But what it does, I think it does very well. It does extremely well, in fact. So 8.5 is where I'm landing. And also, I think just a final point that I forgot to mention is when Travis is starting to grow attracted to Kim, and they have that that scene where he gets up at night because he can't sleep, and again that's a running theme that he can't sleep. He's not been sleeping a lot recently. He's been saying that, which is kind of a sign that maybe he is sleepwalking, like he's maybe sleeping and not realizing it because he's so tired from not sleeping. He's exhausted. And they have that awkward moment where he kind of stares at her chest when she leans back and she gets uncomfortable. And they're kind of bonding about the old times and what was nice, and
talking about food and stuff.
Talking about food and food they can't have anymore. And he reveals that he doesn't like cupcakes or ice cream.
Really, any desserts.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, so maybe that's just showing you that he's different again, perhaps, to hint that he maybe is a. But I was thinking of the title, and it was getting a bit more sexual because he was sort of like staring at her. There's that, when he brings the kid back to their bedroom and he sort of just looks at her
Pete.
for a little bit like, what?
Okay, I know where you're going with it.
Yeah, he brings the kid back to their bedroom and he just stares at her in bed because she's got like her leg out a little bit longer than is normal, and it's a bit creepy. And I was thinking of the title. I'm like, It Comes at Night, and I was like, oh, it's the urge that. Why are you shaking your head? You think I'm going loud? No, It Comes at Night being the urge, like the idea of that it's the urges that he's getting is going to be a big theme of the movie, and that's why I thought he might kind of go crazy and stuff towards the end, but it didn't go down that route. It was more about just this self-impending doom, and it was tragedy and very bleak. But there you go. That is It Comes at Night, which I was looking forward to watching. And why are you laughing every time I say the title now? You're just thinking of a dick, aren't you? You're just thinking of a big dick.
I mean, I usually am.
Oh dear. So that was a odd conversation. It always is when I really like something and Tim doesn't. Usually turns into me explaining why the movie's good, and then Tim just kind of like,
Go back to film school, film boy.
Go back to grade school, boy.
Thank you for referencing one of the best horror movies of the last few years.
I'm not even going to justify that joke with a response. And that was a joke. I know deep down you might think that was just a factual statement, but that was a joke. The boy. Oh no.
Good stuff.
No. This was vastly superior to The Boy, just for the record. It Comes at Night, Dan circles around the boy like it was nothing.
I think it's debatable.
No, it's not.
There's definitely no giant doll man bursting out of the walls in this movie.
Whoa, spoilers for The Boy, in case anyone hasn't seen it and is looking forward to it, Tim.
Everyone's seen it by now. Huge numbers, especially DVD sales.
You sound like Trump right now, you know that? Huge numbers. Biggest numbers ever. All right. Well, okay. I guess I'm wrapping up the show. So, that has been It Comes at Night. Aye, straight face. So we are screwed after the night. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Of course, October's next month, which means we're going to have a lot of bonus episodes throughout the month of October, as we usually do. We are also having multiple votes. Patreon gets votes every month in the $5 tier. They're getting 2 votes this month, one of which is for Knee-High Mischief movies, which includes Ghoulies, Critters, Gremlins, and Puppet Master.
Always makes me laugh.
The other Patreon vote is for classics, which includes Phantasm, The Thing, The Shining, and The Omen. So we'll be doing one of each of those sets next month, but there's also a third vote, which is open to the public. There'll be a link in the description below. It's a werewolf vote, and the options are Cursed, Wolfen, The Howling, and Werewolf of London. So make sure you go into the description below and click on the link, and you can give a vote on that. And we'll do one of those next month, along with a lot of other movies, because it's October and we are going to punish ourselves. Because we're going to punish ourselves with so many episodes in October, we are going to take the first week of November off from streams, just 1 week to recharge the batteries, and then we'll be back in the second week. But October is going to be hectic. We're looking at like 4 reviews a week, basically, which is going to just about damn near kill us. And we usually do 2, for the record, so we're doubling our load.
Okay.
Which comes at night.
Double loads at night, got it.
Tim, you've turned this into a sham. An absolute sham. That is Screws After Midnight. Get us on Twitter at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, where said voting usually takes place. And that is us. So thank you once again for watching. Keep watching scary movies.